Thank you for joining me today on the Private Investigator Experience podcast. I'm your host, Phil Little. On this channel, we talk about the cases and life of a private investigator, an international one, not just only a local one. And then I look at situations around the world might affect us in our own communities with safety and security. I take my work all through the lens of my military, law enforcement, intelligence and service and global security background. Then I add just a bunch of my biblical worldview to look at what's going on in our world, try to make sense of it. I've had to have the privilege of working internationally a lot, and I've shared before, and if you haven't been on any of the other posts, I started from the military and then law enforcement, and from law enforcement took over the chief's job at West Coast Detectives back in '77. And along the way, I became involved with government intelligence and other things over the years, which we won't talk about too much. And then my focus became in intelligence gathering and counterterrorism, which my experience started in Israel and southern Lebanon, which my first hostile intent talks about that, and my journey to find the source of terrorism. But as I began to spread out and build my international intelligence gathering network, it was to be able to provide my clients with good information on any country they might want to go into. In my last post, I talked about the French National Police and getting started there. And then from that, and through John Herbert's introduction to people, as well as a trip we went on. And this now it's unbelievable this has happened again. Back in 1982, a group of us out of Los Angeles, and there were some from Washington, from Secret Service and FBI and local law enforcement in Los Angeles, LAPD, LASO, and some others. And we went on a trip called the Interpol Connection, and we went to London and Paris and Germany and Italy, studying terrorist activities and what happened at the Olympic Games there in Munich in '72. And that was preparation for the '84 Olympics. And here we are, about 3 years before Olympics again in Los Angeles. That's unbelievable. That much time has gone on. But it was during that time that I had met Lemmy Weigold. At that time, he was a captain, an adjutant at GSG-9. He had been there with Major Wagner, who then was a general, had formed GSG-9 after the Olympic Games disaster. And in fact, they had been helped by Israel, Mossad, and their intelligence and special forces in structuring GSG-9. And GSG-9 was unique in that it was part of the military hierarchy, and they were military. And there were five team members normally on each team, one with a different specialty, air, land, sea, and they were on call 24 hours a day. There was a team on call with a loaded C-130 with all of the technical information they would need and weapons and support. And they reported directly to the chancellor and bypassed all the military hierarchy. So if something happened and they were needed, they could be airborne in an hour, going someplace to solve a problem and save people's lives. Well, if that had been the United States or most other countries, and that was a military hierarchy, it had been days or maybe weeks before a political answer could be gotten, going up the chain of command and then over to the military, over to the political structure. This was unique in how they operated. Lemmy was he was hell on wheels and became a great friend. Ran our operation there. After he retired, he continued to run it until he met his unfortunate death some years after that. But Libby was a specialist at gathering information, and he was one that kept us informed about what was going on in Europe. And he was doing a lot of coordination. At that time, there were the various terrorist groups across Europe, in the French and Spain and Germany, Red Army and German faction, and the Irish Republic groups, IRAs up in well, the IRA had specialized in explosives, and Libya was the first one that alerted us to the fact that the IRA had started working down in those European terrorist groups, teaching them on bombing techniques. And a lot of the bombings that were happening across Europe were the result of the IRA technicians who had trained them. So they were gathering information. They were building a picture of their techniques. They got to where they could identify that this was a IRA build before they even tore it apart or even looked at it. Things had gotten pretty bad. There'd been a lot of threats against aircraft and all of that. And this case is very sad and it's disappointing, but it's not surprising that politically decisions are made or by big company decisions are made. One morning it was in November, early November of 1988, that I received a call from Lemmy. At that time, we didn't have secure uh, communications except if we developed and used the encrypted stuff that was available, which was cumbersome at that time. And he said, Phil, there's some stuff really going on, but I can't talk about it on the phone. You need to get over here. And so in a couple of days, I was on a plane headed to Germany. And Lemmy said we might be going into Paris, but later. But when I got there, he took me and showed me photographs, and actually they had two of the bombs. There were five radio bombs that were built. They discovered, and these were pretty big radios that you would carry around at that time. And the explosives were very unique. They had been built into in a way that was just really hard to detect. And in fact, you would really have to take them apart and know what you were looking for. They were built with enough explosives to be able to take down an airplane, either when they were put on in a cargo hold or carried on or whatever it might be. And so it wasn't going to take a lot of explosives to do that. And he said, Phil, we know we've got factual data. We have some of the bomb makers. We know there was five of these made. We have four of them. There's one still missing. And they knew it, and they were all identical. They knew the one missing was identical. And they said that they had notified the Americans, notified Pan Am, and all the basic airlines about the potential problem. And they wanted to put it out to the public. They wanted to put it out to the press and get the information out that there was this threat and that even perhaps with the warning of it, that would head off a disaster. But they chose not to do that. They were told by apparently Pan Am and others that if they put that out, it would shut down air travel across Europe. People would panic. It would cost airlines tens of millions and maybe more of dollars. And so they elected not to post the information. Okay, I can understand a little bit of that. You don't want to create havoc. You don't want to create a fire in the theater type of thing where all kinds of things happen and you have undue consequences. I understand that part of it. But then why don't you put tight security around every airplane, every load that goes on? But they didn't do that. They didn't change their security protocol. And Lemmy was warning me that what could happen. Well, after the fact, when we were talking, after the event occurred and the plane went down, I was back in Germany. And the photos of this radio bomb had been given to the airlines and security organizations. And if they had had a tight security, this radio went on in luggage. So it was seen, it was visible. And it had had the proper security checking and looking for that object, Yeah, it could have been in a suitcase or it could have been, hidden some way. But even then, the checking of luggage should have been to the extent that anything would have been found. But this was more open. And the result of that, all because of money. And it was said to Lemmy and some of his people that by Pan Am that it was cheaper to lose an airplane full of people than it would have been to cause the havoc that hosting it would have been because the airlines at that time, I'm not even sure if they are now, but they were limited by their exposure and under international treaty. So a decision was made that cost all these people their lives. There were 259 passengers and crew on board, 190 Americans, and some Scots and others that were on board that lost their lives because of political considerations or money considerations. That obviously has happened before and after. It's continued to happen. Decisions get made based on political or financial reasons. And okay, sometimes we might need to do that, but then put a cordon of security around the event. As we see now after 9/11, there's been events that are cataloged national security event, such as big football games or World Series or Super Bowl or even the Charlie Kirk assassination memorial. That was considered a national security event. Half the cabinet was there: the president, the vice president, secretary of defense, secretary of war, secretary of state, head of national intelligence, on and on. So yeah, that was a pretty good group of Secret Service agents there just for that. They had a lot of preventive security. I'm hopeful that we have learned a lot since these disasters, but none of this came out in the public. So what was learned from it? I don't know if anything was learned from it because so few of the people really knew about it. And that thing with money and in big companies, looking at their stock price, looking at quarterly reports, and being driven by that, and politicians being fearful of telling the people the truth that it might cause panic or havoc or somehow affect them and their future, puts innocent lives at stake. If you've been in government or public area anywhere that you've had something like this happen and that you've seen and witnessed that got covered up, pushed under the rug, never came out, let me know. I'd love to hear about that. Leave it on any of the comments or send me an email. Give me a history of it, summary of it, to pi777 at gmail.com. I think it's time that all of us looked inside and said, there are some things more important than money, some things more important than the business profits. There's some things more important than a politician's career or future. And the facts should be put out. The public should be informed. There should be transparency. This administration that we have now, there's more transparency in this government than I've seen in my lifetime in any administration, no matter which party. And that's good. But there's still, I'm sure, things to come on that. And the problem is maintaining that because every 4 years we have the prospect of changing administrations. And one can flip flop back and take us backwards instead of forwards. So that's why it's important to get involved, be registered to vote, get out to vote, and don't vote for the party. Vote for the candidate and the platform they have that's nearest to our constitutional rights, protections, freedom of religion, freedom of our Second Amendment rights to own firearms, and freedom lack of takeover by the government, unreasonable seizures and searches, and all that. Look for the people that have godly principles and believe in the moral conditions that our country was formed on, not this woke, gender all this ideology that's from the pit of hell itself. So stand up, let your voice be heard. Let me know. Would you like, share, subscribe, and you know the drill. Hit the notification bell. And if you have questions about could a PI help me with this problem I have in my family or my business, send me that in an email. Give me a summary, and I'll let you know if we can help in some way, or you can find somebody to help. PLittlePI777 at gmail.com. Okay. Till next time, be safe. May God bless you, your family, and may God bless America.